We can probably get started as we wait for Bill.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in our panel on the past, the present, and visions for the future of IEEE VR. This panel is being organized by me and by Vicky Interrante. Vicky is from the University of Minnesota, and I am from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. So we want to allow a lot of discussion, and we're eager to see the presentation from our panelists. So I'm going to get right into the introduction of this panel. So since 2020, there has been a lot of things that have changed in the technology spectrum, and a lot of advancement has happened, especially where it relates to remote work, and virtual distances have really been shortened. That, of course, led to an online delivery of IEEE VR, which was a feat that was pulled off by some of our colleagues in very short notice in 2020, and we are in our third year of the online delivery for IEEE VR. This brings opportunities and have brought opportunities for the future of the conference, and that's one of the things that we want to discuss today during our panel. Today, partially because of the online delivery and also because of the natural growth that the conference has been having over the past several years, the conference is larger, more accessible, more inclusive, and more diverse than it has ever been before. We have over 1,000 participants, I believe, from 42 different countries. And that's something that is really amazing if we think about it, especially when we relate to the difficulty of access that IEEE VR has always, any conference has always had when it had been presented in person, as it has been the traditional form. So our goal really with this panel is to think about how can we integrate the benefits of remote delivery of IEEE VR, of the online modality of IEEE VR with the classic in-person conference that I think a lot of us are eager to get back to in the post-pandemic world. And we are doing this panel in 2022, maybe because we are a little optimistic, and we hope that this is the last time that we're going to be all online. And then next year, we need to think about what should we do, because we don't want to lose all these amazing benefits that we have gotten with the online delivery, but we also want to get back to the nice things about being in person that we always had over the past 27 years, I think, or 29, depending on how you count. And I think we're going to hear a little about that from Bill. Okay, so our panel will be structured as follows. We're going to have about half of the time for the hour-and-a-half panel with presentations from our 5 amazing panelists that I'm going to introduce in a second. Then we're going to break out into different sessions in order to have a little bit of a more intimate discussion about the panel, about the issues that we are discussing. And for about 20 minutes, and in the end, we're going to regroup with an open discussion about what we should do. So without further ado, let's go into the introductions. Our first speaker is going to be Bill Sherman from the National Institute of Standards and Technology. He was the general chair of IEEE VR in 2008. He's been the author and editor of several books, including Understanding Virtual Reality. And he is one of the few people who has been to all IEEE VR conferences since 1995. And he'll talk about a history perspective on the conference pre-COVID. Our second speaker is going to be Joaquim Jorge from the Universidade de Lisbon in Portugal. he was the general chair of IEEE VR last year, and he is one of the general chairs this year. He is a professor at the Instituto Superior Técnico and heads the graphic and interaction group at the INEX ID. And he'll talk about the experiences from the online delivery or the virtual IEEE VR since 2020. Then we have Katharina Krösl from VRVis. She is the poster chair this year, one of the poster chairs, and he's a postdoctoral researcher at VRVis. She is also a founding member of IEEE Women in Engineering Austria, and she will give us a young perspective on the conference spanning between pre and post-pandemic era. Then we're going to have the chair of the steering committee, Ed Swan from Mississippi State University. He's a professor of computer science and engineering there. And he was the general chair of IEEE VR 2020 and 21. He will give the steering committee's perspective and what thoughts and how open the steering committee is to hearing the community on how to move forward with the conference in the coming years. Finally, we have we're very happy to have Liv Erickson from Mozilla. She heads the Mozilla hubs over there, which many of you know, I think, as one of the platforms that was used for IEEE VR 2020. She's a contributor to the Open 3D engine and a technology policy fellow at Aspen Institute. And we're really excited to hear also from the industry, because sometimes we get a little caught up in with academics and hear about what are the opportunities for our conference moving forward in a more hybrid format. So let's get into some very quick 5-second polls that we have selected here for you all to fill out, so we get a temperature on the on how the community is. So the first one, you should select the top 2 most valuable benefits that you get from attending IEEE VR. Feel free to, yes, I see answers coming in. I'm going to
I like several of these. 2
yeah, you should only select 2 because we want, yeah, all of us, I think, can be appreciative of all of that, but we want the top 2 answers. So I'm going to give another 10 or so seconds. We have 45 out of 85 responses. So they're coming in quickly, which is great. All right, last call. And
very hard to choose.
There's a couple more.
Yeah, okay. Oh, we need a few more people here. And I think good, great. All right, so let me end the poll.
Someone took my
take
picture.
a look at the results. We're going to look at the results now. Just 1 second, we are processing, we're using amazing machine learning technology to do that. And yeah, so this is interesting. I mean, I think networking and being in touch with current research are the most persistent ones. People also come to the conference to present their work. And visiting research labs and visiting new places really are also considered. There are other things that we didn't put there that some people also have at the top of their choices. So yes, I mean, these are some things that we can discuss later with regards to the to how we want to, like, what's important, right? And what should be considered moving forward. Okay, second poll, and this is a very quick one, single choice. If IEEE VR 2023 is held outside your local area, would you most likely to attend in person or online? Yeah, great that these are coming in very quickly. So okay, let's give a 5 more seconds. Here we have 80% of participations. That's an amazing attrition rate for polls. So I appreciate everybody responding to them. Okay, Vicky, I think you can capture that. It's been up for about a minute now. All right. Okay, so that thing, we have about 2/3 of people plan to go in person, but we have 1/3 of the people who are here who have responded to the survey who would still want to attend online. So definitely there is an interesting, a big need for an option for people to have access to the conference when it's held outside of their area. Okay, so now Vicky is going to talk about what we're going to do after the presentations with the breakout sessions.
So after the panelists, we're going to have breakout sessions for 20 minutes. Actually, if you want, I can wait until after the panelists have talked to go into these details.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so sorry about that, Vicky. We had talked about it. That's my. Let me keep it here, and I'm going to stop the share now. Bill, go ahead and share your screen and tell us about IEEE VR over the past 25 years.
Okay, let's
in
see.
7 minutes.
Yeah, so open system preferences. Allow Zoom to share your screen out just a moment.
Oh, maybe you're gonna have to exit out of the.
Regis, do you want to introduce Bill? You know, that slide.
We did all of us already, but
Oh, that's
yeah.
right.
let me
Yeah.
just see if I can just share my screen.
Okay.
So yeah, while I'm doing this, I have basically 15 seconds per year of the conference. And where'd my PowerPoint go? Share screen.
It looks great.
Oh, you're sharing.
Yeah, yeah. Now go ahead. Yeah, I introduced Bill early on just in the interest of time, but while he is starting the sharing, he is one of the dinosaurs of IEEE VR, and he is the, I think, documentarian in chief of IEEE VR. So he has a lot of records of pictures, videos from the conference.
Uh-oh. Maybe.
So maybe Bill, while you are figuring something out, let's move ahead to Joaquim, Jorge, and then we can go backwards. So Joaquim can talk about the conference since the pandemic and what are some of the challenges, and then we'll go back to you. So Joaquim, whenever you're ready, as you know, already been introduced, General Chair of IEEE VR last year and this year.
You're muted, Joaquim.
Yeah, sure. Are you seeing my slides?
Yes.
Good. You're good.
Okay, cool. So I decided to make it a little bit provocative, and I decided to talk about the inverted conference, how I learned to stop worrying and love the pandemic. For you Stanley Kubrick fans out there, if you understand the reference here. So So IEEE VR is not the Doctor Strange love of conferences, but I would like to talk about my experience last year and some of the lessons we've learned and offer some perspectives for the future. We had something like 1,209 participants, 25 paper sessions, 19 workshops and tutorials. So it was 13 workshops, 6 tutorials, a bit of a 146 posters and 20 doctoral consortium attendees. So after the very successful recovery from the Atlanta crew, Kyle is here. Our main goals for 2021, we did this in the middle of the pandemic, and again everybody was staying at home and doing everything. We wanted to minimize presentation times, maximize dialogue opportunities, foster engagement, and promote socialization. How did that happen? So we decided on a flexible conference structure where we had Zoom as the basis, as we have this year. Yeah, Twitch is not written like that way. So we captured the talks from Zoom to Twitch and then streamed those for YouTube and from there to VRBella because of VRBella limitations. Following experience that we had with 2 ACM conferences on the previous year, we decided to go with Discord for all things discussion. And after our colleagues in experience, we decided to go with VRBella for the posters, demos, and social program. For the technical program, we made the radical decision to shorten presentations to 7 minutes. And surprisingly, against all my fears, this worked. Because the main reason why it worked, it was the same reason why it's working this year, is that if people have to rehearse to make a 7-minute video, they'll be able to deliver a 7-minute presentation, come hell or high water. And then we decided to organize the paper sessions in panel format to maximize time and minimize overheads for discussions. And the questions were posed through Discord, through student volunteers, to the session share, to the participants. And we had something like 25 sessions in 2 parallel tracks over 4 days. VRBella, I would like to thank 3 people who were, oh gosh, I'm forgetting the student volunteers and Soraya, Paulo, and Ines, the student volunteer shares, who really made sure that the poster session happened. Now, Rob Lindemann, whom all of us know, did a fantastic treasure hunt thing called Ready Player 21, organized flash crowds. With the help of Heather Dodds and Fernando Simões, who came fresh from ISMAR 20, and helped me setting up this. We did speed dating, 2 sessions. We repeated the speed dating again this year. And we did one evening dance night, among many other things. And I think this went mostly well, although we know of VRBella issues. A post-conference questionnaire revealed that 93% of people reported problems with locomotion. It was difficult to implement social norms. And one interesting thing that we noticed with VRBella this year is that things that you do naturally in person, like exchanging business cards, have no counterparts in most virtual environments. And VRBella is no exception there. And of course, we are all aware of the multimedia problems with VRBella, but still, I do not regret the decision that we made this year and last year to go with VRBella for the social program. I was talking to one participant, my good friend Sophie Jorge, who mentioned that VRBella provided good occasions for serendipitous meetings and getting to know strangers, which is really one of the objectives. So, lessons learned from the conference. I believe one of the good things that we did was to promote using scholarships for promoting inclusion and diversity. And I would like to thank VGTC, the Visualization and Graphics Technical Committee, for doing that. And I believe we should expand this program no matter what we do next years. We should focus on online engagement for the part of the conference that has to do with remote participation. More on that on a minute. And first and foremost, the interesting thing is that we managed to keep presentations short and sweet. And I think we are discovering how much stuff we can say in 7 minutes or less. So, what is my vision or discussion for what lies ahead? The picture is still a little bit hazy, but I see the inverted conference coming about as a panorama where journal submissions dominate first and second. What do I mean by this? I believe that in the future people will submit first to journals and then come to the conference to discuss their journal presentations. So we are at the point, and this is why I call it at the inverted conference, where we are subverting the traditional relationships between journal publication and conference publication. It used to be that we did conference first, journal second, and now we are seeing an interesting and momentous intertwining between journal and conference submissions. Several conferences have already experienced are already experienced with around-the-clock deadlines. CSCW is one of them, but not the single one. I believe that shorter presentations have come to stay, and we will not go back to the 30-minute presentations, but maybe I'm proved wrong. And hopefully this will foster opportunities for more dialogue. Challenges. So next year we'll probably have a hybrid event. This entails usually a heavy multimedia budget, especially for conferences like VR. I wonder whether satellite events are a good thing or a bad thing. On the half empty perspective, they can promote fragmentation. On another positive vision, they can promote expansion of the community. Only future will tell how this will work for VR. I would like to know, and Bill Sherman will talk more about this. We have experimented with satellite events in the past, I believe. And I believe that we should be careful about the way we go about satellite events in the future. There are opportunities and challenges there. One thing that intrigues me here is what is the sweet spot for presentation length. We've gone for 30-minute presentations to 20-minute to 12-minute last year, and this year we are doing 7 minutes. CHI 2021 experimented with 5 minutes, and we had in our one workshop 3-minute presentations that surprisingly seem to work. There are strong pressures to keep carbon footprint low all across the communities, but there's a big challenge in keeping a level playing field for remote participants and local participants. So I would like to end with a word of hope and a word of caution. The word of hope is that we have opened the door to fantastic new possibilities with this hybrid format. And the word of caution, I will quote Mark Twain, aka Samuel Langhorne Clemens, that it's very difficult to predict, especially the future. Thank you very much for your attention.
All right. Thank you very much, Joaquim. I think it's really important to have your perspective on what's happened. And finally, we have Bill here. Bill, we are seeing your, start a presentation. And excellent. Let's hope that this will...
Yep, sorry about that. There we go.
Great. All right, off you go.
All right, yeah, so we'll just test out, see if Joaquim's correct in how much you can present in 7 minutes. I have basically 15 seconds per year per conference year to do that. And as had just said, I've been going to VR since 1995. Let me focus so I can advance. Oh, there we go. So 95 was basically the birth of a new conference from two parent conferences that had lasted 1 year each, both by IEEE. And then it was a symposium for 5 years and then turned into a conference in the year 2000. So here we go. So here's North Carolina in 95. Most of the conferences are demos. And so this is, especially in the early days when equipment was expensive, this is, how we got things. There's Ben Delaney trying out a head-related transfer function, the first such device. Here's Mark Monet's little painting app or designing app, which I used as a machine problem. That little foam can was my favorite thing to do. There's the Phantom, which is seen a lot throughout the early years, especially VR, and the inventor there on the left, who is now a congressman. So Santa Clara, here's the push. Here's an old head-mounted display, test stop. There's me. There's Linda Jacobson. There's another Phantom. Albuquerque, unfortunately, I couldn't find pictures or video. Back then, I was carrying a camcorder around. Here's Atlanta, the first time we were in Atlanta, and more haptic feedback, gloves. Here's Doug Bowman and the Gorillas in the Bits, a very popular application back then. Virtual Vietnam, which was like the second application from Larry Hodges's company. Then it's Houston, and now we are actually IEEE VR. And so there's Bowen and Fred, a little blurry, but that is the kind of introducing Fred as the keynote speaker for the first official IEEE VR conference. There's my colleague Simon when he was a PhD student, and I think Jason Lee testing out science in VR. This is at Houston's VR lab where they were building the training tool to do the Hubble space repair. Here is the conference that was hosted by Greg Berdia, and it was in New Jersey, which was just across the river, of course, from New York. Here's some more haptic stuff combined with stereo vision. Here's some of the stuff out of Greg's lab, so feedback for rehabilitation. And we're off to Yokohama, the first time we're in out of the United States. The Sapporo brewery there actually had a VR exhibit, which I visited on my way out of Tokyo. Almost missed my flight because of that. Here's some demos. There's Larry Hodges giving, I think, probably a keynote. There's a gentleman performing, what is it? Now I've forgotten. Theater, Orlando, and some more haptics. So here's a little haptic device where you can touch things. So I forgot to mention. So this is for all of you who have not been attending for the last 30 years. Now this is to catch you all up. More haptics. Here's 2003 in Los Angeles, the first time we were there. More haptics from this little spider cam thing. Chicago, unfortunately, I didn't have any pictures. So now we're in Germany in 2005. It's the second time we're out of the United States, first time in Europe. That's not Bonn, by the way. That's actually Cologne, which I visited on my way out of town again. Here's Fred Brooks giving, I think, the first of his keynotes, or maybe the second of his keynotes, I guess. There's Bowen Lofton getting an award, Mark Bolas getting an award. One of my favorite demo apps was this Puppet app on the left. And another popular sort of thing was the hang gliding demo. We've seen a few of those actually over the years. That was the first one we've seen. Back to the US and near Washington, DC. So here are our hosts. Here's some head mount displays and some stereo displays. And we're off to Charlotte, Doug Bowman's chair for that year. And here's Jim Foley's keynote speech. I wanted to highlight there. He pointed out our book. He actually pointed out Doug's book too. Sorry, Doug. There, I think, is Regis asking a question. There's Rob and my student. Some more demos here. I like this little phone device here, kind of pre-smartphones, but it's doing augmented reality tracking. Here's the one I hosted in Reno. We were in the first time in a casino. We went to the Bat Museum, or the Car Museum in Reno, actually, but that was part of the Haptic Symposium. This is my daughter putting together the kits. Everybody got 25 poker chips and a deck of cards, and we were putting those together there. So here's awards for Bowen, awards for Doug, awards for Sabine and Wolfgang and Bernd. And here is Mark Bolas. A couple of times here, he's visiting the DRI cave there on the right. He's giving the keynote on the left. More demos, and eating. And that was getting ready for next year. So here's more haptics. We hosted the haptics symposium that year. Now we're in Lafayette, where we had a good time. There was a nice party in Lafayette, but first some demos of treadmill we had. So here's the event. And this is actually kind of where the first guitar, I think, comes in. Ed can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's Ed happened to have his guitar with him and hopped up on stage with these performers, L'Angelus, which actually became one of my favorite bands for a long time. I have a couple of their albums. Jared Lanier getting an award. Rob Lindeman talking about next year's conference. Here's the party, the rest of that party. Here's Skip, hanging out with Skip, which is always fun. And now we're at next year, 2010, which is near Boston. There's Boston in the distance there. Boston Dynamics was like right across the street from the conference. They don't even know here. And we did our first general chairs photo. So you'll see a few of these coming up here. We went to the Boston Museum, which I thought, Science Museum, which we had fun at. Lots more demos, lots of haptics. So the haptics is really one of those things where it's kind of nice to go to the conference. There's Fred again. I think I see Evan in the lower right there. So this was interesting. So here was another musical event the students did after hours. And on the left is, actually, I went to the Lego store in Boston, and they had augmented reality at the Lego store in Boston. It was kind of cool. All right, now we're going to Singapore. This picture here shows that I think Doug and Hedges were on the same flight with me. We came within less than a degree of the North Pole. So I think the North Pole is in that picture on the right, about as far away from Singapore as you can get, since Singapore is basically on the equator. Here's another thing I found. This design for a smartphone-based head-mounted display by Logan Olson. A couple of people we know, David Crom, Evan Suma, Mark Bolas, the kind of foreshadowed, I guess you'd say, the Oculus. And there's Dan eating a cookie with some smell or sight to actually change that. There's Steve Feiner. Hedges, Dan Cumming and I went to the night safari while we were in Singapore. We did some eating and drinking while we were there. And then we went to California for the third time, this time further south than Los Angeles. Aditi was the host, and so more haptics and stuff, talks. There's our conference chairs that year. And then we're back to Orlando for the second time. This is at Downtown Disney. It happened to be St. Patrick's Day, so there were some performers there. Jeremy Bellinson was our keynote speaker. And on the right there, I believe that's Palmer Luckey with Jason. So he came to our conference that year. And you'll notice in some of these, there's a lot of Oculus DK1s in a lot of these demos. Let's see where we are. There's Greg and Ben hosting, and they did a little poll after the conference there. Here's some singing and our chairs up to Minnesota. Lots of demos in Minnesota. A lot of talks too. We went to the museum, did our group shot, did some more music. Now we're back in Europe for the second time. This is actually Marseille, which is near Arles. You'll see I go to a lot of hard rock cafes. One of my favorite memories is going to this Carrières de Lumière event, which is a salt mine, and they have all these projections in it. So I think a few of you will see yourselves in some of those pictures. More food and drinking, more demos, more talks, more demos, more food and drinking, and our group shots, and the music. Now it has become it's a pretty standard tradition. All right, back to Carolina. So here's some South Carolina this time. Here's some demos. There's Henry, there's Amy, there's Ming, all doing this skiing thing. That's a little platform on top of a bowling ball. There's Ed, there's Saab, there's Henry again. Henry, or Ed, Steve, Ellis. So a lot of cool demos there. I saw Fred there too. So we're still in Greenville. So there's our group shot. California, lots of awards in California. Mike Zaida, Greg, I don't know. I think Greg must be getting that award there. Evan announcing next year's. So next year was in Los Angeles. Here's a pre-consumer CV1 from Oculus. Some haptic stuff. Our group shot. And now we're back in Germany again. So we're in Reitlingen. There's Mark Bolas getting an award, and my phone is annoying me. there's Mark and Henry. There's a lot of demos and stuff that happened there. There was Regis, and went straight from Germany to Japan again. So here's Osaka. We had another roundabout of singing in Osaka, and we went to the market and ate some good food there. And a few of us went drinking afterwards. More demos from Osaka. And here is my wrap up. So here's another bar event where I heard another new band that I started listening to quite a bit, the Tokyo, oh, now I forget their name, the Tokyo Paradise something Orchestra. Anyway, that is my thing. I don't know if I did that in 7 minutes or not, but that for now, everybody is caught up in their VR attendance.
Well, yeah, I'm catching my breath here because it was amazing. Thanks for that perspective. I think no one could do it better than you.
So digital cameras didn't exist when we started. I was carrying around a high-8 camcorder for a few of those years.
Right.
Hey, we should do a shares photo op sometime this year.
Yes. Okay, so now let's get the young person's perspective. Katharina, who has been in the community for, I don't know, maybe 5, 6, 7 years. And we're really eager to hear about the thoughts and considerations from this younger generation. Take it away, Katharina.
Thank you. Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Katharina Krösl and I'm a postdoctoral researcher at VRVis and also one of these year's poster chairs at IEEE VR. And as mentioned, I was asked to provide my perspective as a young researcher on the future of IEEE VR. So I started my PhD in 2016 and finished in 2020. And during this time, I have been to several in-person conferences. But why do we attend conferences? Or more specifically, what is the goal for a young researcher when attending a conference? It's not just about listening to talks, trying demos, looking at posters, or presenting your own work. A very important aspect of conferences, in my opinion, is building connections for your later career as a researcher. So talking to your peers and generating new ideas and motivation for your next project. And conferences are where and when you build your network. But we all know networking looks a bit differently nowadays. And the way we present papers or give demos has also drastically changed. On the one hand, it can be more comfortable to present from your own home. And on the other hand, it can be quite challenging to give a live demo remotely, as you can see here, me giving a live demo on the picture on the right. And you might need quite a complicated technical setup. Make sure you have a stable internet connection and sound settings are correct, mic and camera working, and all of this on top of an already stressful situation for a young researcher. So you see there are pros and cons to in-person and virtual conferences, but let's have a closer look. So at an in-person conference, you can listen to live talks, meet new people, get input from senior researchers, connect with your peers and build your network, become known for your work when you present something, have discussions at social events, and probably experience a different country or different culture. On the negative side, you might have to travel for long hours to get to the conference. You might suffer from jet lag, spend a lot of money on travel and accommodation, increase your ecological footprint, and you will not be available for colleagues or partners at home, which actually, in my opinion, might be a good thing because then you're not distracted and can really focus on the conference. So for virtual conferences, one of the big benefits that everyone mentions is that you can watch recorded talks at any time. But I see this a bit critical because let's be real, many of us already said, oh, I will watch this talk sometime later when I have time. And then we never did. So actually, to my experience, I have seen more talks at in-person conferences than at virtual conferences, because watching YouTube videos for hours at home on your computer screen can be quite exhausting. Of course, you can use VRVis or Discord to talk to people in different countries or continents, so that's good. And you can reconnect with your peers and meet with them in GatherTown, VRVis, Mozilla Hubs, whatever virtual environment is used for the conference. And you can also become known for your work when you present something. And you can also attend virtual social events. And I think IEEE VR this year did a really great job in providing all kinds of online social events. But I also see this a bit critical because during a long conference day, I need a break. I need to get away from my computer. So I don't really like sitting in front of my computer for social events as well, because this isn't really relaxing. You will, of course, save time and money for travel and accommodation if you stay at home. And you will also be available to colleagues or partners at home, which I think is not good, because then you're distracted and will try to do many things at the same time when actually you should attend the conference. Also, on a negative side, you might live in a different time zone than a conference. So for me, it's past 10 p.m. right now. And most of this year's conference is during the night when I actually want to sleep. So that's a bit difficult. You have to be very active to make new connections in my experience at virtual conferences. And you have to actively seek out the advice from probably busy senior researchers who are also trying to answer emails and be in touch with their colleagues. Also, you have to balance daily work and conference attendance, because at an in-person conference, you're away, so you are not reachable. But at a virtual conference, you are technically still at home or at your workplace, and you could do some work as well. Another important factor to consider is accessibility, as mentioned already. Remote access allows more people to attend the conference who might not be able to attend an in-person event due to some limitations of their physical abilities or monetary constraints. So this is something we need to consider for the future. So where do we go from here? The value of an in-person conference is hard to measure. But I talked to many of my peers, young postdocs and PhD students, and we all agree we want in-person conferences back. We need real-world face-to-face meetings to get to know more researchers in our field and exchange ideas during a conference dinner or coffee break. So in the future, we somehow need to enable social interaction and networking. I think we already did first steps in this direction, but we can do more. Our community is in a unique position to shape the technology for the conference format of the future, which could be hybrid, to support both in-person and remote conference attendance. But I want to raise a critical question here. Do we really want hybrid conferences? Having the choice to present in person or remotely might sound awesome, but for young researchers, it is not always up to them to make that decision. They might want to attend a conference, but their university or research institution decides otherwise to save money. And let's assume we have the perfect technology for hybrid conferences. What happens if young researchers actually visit the conference in person, hoping to meet their peers and get input from senior researchers in their field? And then many people are not physically there because they present remotely. So even though the concept of hybrid conferences sounds promising, we should have a critical view on all aspects and consequences that a certain conference format has. And I'm looking forward to hearing your opinions on hybrid conferences and the future of IEEE VR during the breakout sessions. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot, Katharina. That was great. I think this is really good food for thought for us to consider what comes next. So now we are going to hear from Ed Swan, who is the chair of the IEEE VR. Oops, sorry, I'm almost shared something. I started sharing something by mistake. Yes, so he's the chair of the IEEE VR steering committee and has been really involved in the conference. And we really want to hear what is the steering committee perspective on the future, on what is to come for IEEE VR. So Ed, you don't have anything to share.
No, so I
keep your introduction here. Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't make any slides because I thought
I mean,
we
you
weren't
don't have
supposed
any
to.
slides to share. Yeah, I didn't mean that.
No,
you
I don't.
have a lot,
but I do have
to
a
share.
list. I have a little list of things to discuss. So I'll first mention that I'm the person on the panel who was one of the co-chairs of VR 2020 when the online conference started. And for 2020, we had planned from the beginning for a hybrid conference to have an online experience as part of that, involving Mozilla Hub's technology, and Blair McIntyre agreed to be one of the general chairs specifically to try to make that work. And if that had been the case, we would have all experienced a hybrid in-person online conference already in 2020. And that is the reason why we could transition from in-person to online in 3 weeks, because we were already planning the online. And because we had Mozilla, programmers ready to change things as we needed them to be changed to make it work. So we were the very first conference to successfully do online in 2020. And I personally was focused more on the publication issues. So I kind of had a front row seat to all of that. But Kyle and Blair really made that happen. Secondly, I'll say that I am presenting from the Davidson University satellite event, and it's just so very, very nice to be somewhere in person with people. And most of us drove here from nearby states. I only know one person who flew in, but I'm experiencing a satellite event, and it is just very nice. So the steering committee has the following kind of formal jobs. We choose the future locations of the conference. And in tandem with that, we choose the future teams who will run the conference. And so those are extremely important decisions. And, that's one of the main things we do. We also choose the future program chairs, both the journal program chairs and the conference program chairs. And then we also engage in strategic long-term planning. So all of the things that are being said here are things that we, consider and discuss. And we also are part of the relationship between IEEE VR and VGTC. So VGTC is the overall group for our conference and our sister conferences organized under IEEE, broadly within the realm of computer graphics. And so once a month, I attend the VGTC meetings. And VGTC is also the body that negotiates with our journal, TVCG. It's, of course, eternally confusing that these two four-letter acronyms are composed of the same letters in slightly different, orders, and everyone is constantly putting one where they mean the other, constantly. So I mentioned as part of the opening session, and I will always keep mentioning this, the Viz community dominates VGTC, but There are elections, including in the next few months. I encourage everyone in our community to vote in those elections. And the more people we have on BGTC, the more we influence kind of the larger direction of the, series of conferences. So I personally have also had a focus the last 4 years or 5 years on trying to archive more of the conference history and decisions through different committees making formal statements that are published and archived in the IEEE Digital Library Conference Front Matter. The great thing about these statements is that we can have as much front matter as we want. And IEEE Digital Library is a group of people who promise to archive this in perpetuity. So just as we can all look up a paper from 100 years ago, in theory, someone from 100 years from now can see, how the journal review process was done in a certain year. So things that the steering committee is discussing and are going to continue to discuss, in addition to the formal duties that I mentioned, the reviewing process, how many reviews can people actually do, what needs to be improved. I think there's agreement that things need to be improved, additional reviews, quality of reviews, and so that's an issue. Another challenge that we were already looking at before the pandemic came along was the growth in the community and the growth of attendance at the conference. So at Osaka, we had nearly 1,000 people attending. And at some point that begins to bump up against the limits of what a single person, who is often, but not always, a professor somewhere, what can a single person really manage in terms of size and scale of event, and how big of an event can really happen at a single conference hotel, and at what point is some sort of professional conference management required to have an in-person event of that size. So that's an issue. And of course, the biggest issue, which has been the most discussed thing in this panel so far, is the mode of the conference. To what degree is it in person? To what degree is it online? And what about the future of satellite events? And so those are the issues. I'm just going to leave it as those are issues that we're considering, and finish my remarks with that.
All right, thank you very much, Ed. It's great that we have the steering committee thinking so fondly and carefully about the future of the conference. And I should say also that the motivation for this panel came from Ed and the steering committee, because they want to hear what the community have to say. Okay, so now let's hear the industry perspective. What's out there, and what is the support that the technology can offer for us moving forward with whatever format we end up having. So as I mentioned, Liv is the head of Mozilla Hubs over at Mozilla. So I'll just give it to you. Go ahead, Liv.
All right. Can you all see the slide okay? Cool. Excellent. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Today, I'm going to share a little bit about what we've been considering and observing around virtual events, both with hubs and then within the industry as a whole. I'll share some thoughts on where I think spatial technology for events is headed in general. Some of it's near term, some of it's going to be a little bit more theoretical, so you'll have to forgive those parts. And by way of introduction, just a little bit more about me, because right now I'm kind of a square on a screen. This is my avatar in hubs, participating in a research study around facial tracking in virtual events and how that changes the way we interact. As you can tell, she's excited at the prospect of having more ways to have expressiveness in virtual worlds. So to get started, the thing that excites me so much personally about spatial computing is that we get superpowers pretty much. A couple of years ago when we did IEEE VR in hubs, people showed up digitally as avatars and would do things like fly around the space to get better views and seats when people were presenting. And that is a little bit silly on the surface, but the implications of that go further when they allow us to start considering what it means to build events around a system that can break the laws of physics. We haven't had to think about conferences and events that way before, but there's some potential there. Another consideration that we see with hybrid events and how immersive technologies can start to fit into that is how we manage our identities across the events that we're participating in. You saw my avatar, that's just one way that I show up to different spaces and hubs. But in a purely AFK or IRL event, you're going to pretty much look the same to everybody. You've probably got a name tag on that says what you do and where you work, or where you're doing research and where you're studying. And you're not probably changing clothes from like session to session and changing the way you appear and like jumping from like a business outfit to a more social outfit as the conference goes on. And when we think about hybrid events and virtual events, we start to see ways where platforms can give individuals more granularity and choice over the way that they're presenting themselves to the people that they're with, based on the context that they're experiencing there. And so, I was at a virtual conference last week that used a couple of different platforms, and the way that I showed up to each of those different events was really different depending on the platform that I was using and the people who I was connecting with in those spaces. So I had some sessions on Zoom where I was, camera off, just kind of listening to the audio. I had some Discord back channel sessions going on where we could talk about what was happening and be in multiple places at the same time. I attended a midday meditation session in Spatial Chat, which is a 2D spatial platform. And then at the end of the conference, went to like a poster session where instead of just making posters and presenting those, the creators had built entire rooms around what they were researching and studying for this festival. And so these were all different ways that I was engaging with other people and other content throughout this conference. And I could have a lot of control over the way that I was showing up. And that's something that virtual and augmented reality can really facilitate, both in a purely virtual sense, but also in hybrid events. When we start to think about how augmented reality headsets are going to change the way that we're interacting with content in a physical space and kind of layering on digital elements to that, the way that people perceive us will come into play around our identity in these in-person events too. And we'll have to be thinking about and managing that and building safe identity structures around that. From a cognitive perspective, spatial capabilities in virtual events give us different ways of feeling presence. We now see a spectrum of opportunities, some of which have been touched on already, about how we are more able to be more or less engaged in a conference. And so when we think about that, compared to like a physical conference by itself, we have kind of a yes or no, are you at the conference or not? But now we get to play a lot with the nuance of that and layer on these different technologies and think about it. So like, let's take, for example, South by Southwest is going on right now. Let's say one person is a presenter at South by Southwest. So they go to the conference, they present their talk, and then they don't attend anything else. That was the only reason they went. They maybe hang out with people that they met there. And let's consider someone who's not in Austin, isn't at the event, but is following like meticulously everything that every speaker is like talking about and reading their research. Like, which one of those two people is at South by Southwest? We start to kind of change what we're thinking about with regards to attending events in general. And so when we think about how that applies in the future with VR, we're going to keep discovering new opportunities that feel out of reach to us today. Oftentimes we're still thinking about replicating the way that physical events have happened in the past. And I think there's a really big opportunity space for spatial technologies in particular to allow us to basically reconsider what that fundamental purpose is in terms of how people are connecting and how technology can or can't facilitate that in different ways. We can think about whether or not it makes sense to replicate a conference the way that we attend in a physical space in and of itself. I remember when we were first talking about whether or not GDC should go virtual, and it's like, do we really want 30,000 virtual avatars in the same place at once? We have to think more concretely about the purpose for each of those different type of attendees and what they're coming into. And the cool thing about having hybrid situations for conferences is that because in a lot of these cases, the attendees are coming from such a diverse background and have such different perspectives on what they're looking to get out of the conference, virtual and hybrid opportunities may be more flexible than trying to design a physical space that works for everyone. And so I think that that's really an opportunity where these hybrid events come into play. We can extend out in-person conferences and the artifacts from those in-person events to spatial environments as well that persist past the time of the physical conference. We can keep asynchronous tools in place such that we could have, physical speakers that are being streamed into a virtual space to a virtual audience. We can have a virtual avatar that's being projected onto a big screen if a speaker can't present into a physical location. Or we might see a place where that becomes bidirectional and you actually have both, like we saw at SIGGRAPH Asia in 2018, where we had a virtual panelist who was on stage with physical panelists on this giant, like real size screen. And I think that as those types of technologies and those display technologies, and we get more accustomed to virtual worlds and being present as avatars, all of those will come into play as ways that we can think about changing up different pieces of the conference experience. And so one of the things that I think that we could consider with virtual and hybrid events is using that, not as much for some of the synchronous components, although there are opportunities there, but really looking at it as a way to facilitate collecting artifacts from events that happen. As Bill was talking about the past IEEE VR conferences, I was thinking like, I would love to just see this and walk around in a museum of IEEE VR conferences, or be able to, imagine taking the concept of a research paper and having tools available to make that an entire virtual world itself. And I can think about things like volumetric capture, which is, doable now. It's not really cost effective to do it in real time, but being able to capture and project a hologram of a speaker into a virtual space, or bring folks together from very different locations and have them able to interact more naturally, even past digital avatars, is something that I think will make a big impact for how we think about recording and capturing events, regardless of whether or not they're happening in a physical location or a virtual one. And not to get too theoretical here, but what we're starting to see with hubs and with some of these other events is blurring the line between space and time. Previously, conferences were in a space at the same time, and what technology is enabling us to do is kind of play around with which components are really required to be spatial and which ones can be temporal, and generating new artifacts that can go on to really evolve over time. You can imagine a speaker who is recorded as a hologram coming back and maybe amending something that they presented, decades later, and have that in the same event artifact. And so with hubs, what we're thinking about is partially logistical, and how do you take a virtual events platform today and hold an event? But we're also thinking about that 3D artifact side and making that accessible to anyone, so that building these virtual spaces is like building a PowerPoint presentation or putting together a poster. Because as we give everyone these tools, the spaces that are part of these virtual and hybrid conferences are collaboratively built, and they can last indefinitely. And I think that this conference in particular, IEEE VR, is a really fun audience to be kind of experimenting and pushing with that, which is what we're already seeing.
Thank you so much. So we need now to move on to the breakout sessions, because we've seen a ton of comments in the chat. And one of the things that we really wanted to get out of this panel was a chance for everybody to have their voice heard, because we've just got such a wonderful diversity of attendees with a diversity of experiences and a diversity of opinions. And so I've set up a shared Google Doc. I can put it in the chat as well. If you go to this, there's going to be 10 breakout rooms with about 10 people in each room. And what I'd like to have is if in each breakout room, the person with the first name that comes first in the alphabet can be the note taker, but everybody else can also feel free to add to these documents, because these documents are going to be our record of what you're thinking. So without further ado, let me set up the breakout rooms and send everybody into the breakout rooms. I think we're still going to aim for about 18 minutes in the breakouts, and then come back for a group discussion at the end to share some of the main topics that bubbled up from the breakout room. So one thing before I send you in there, I want to try to, everybody has opinions, try to focus on actionable insights. How can we make this a win-win for everybody? So let me go ahead and set these up. So we'll have 10 breakout rooms, and I'm going to assign automatically.
See you all in about 18 minutes. Okay, so we weren't sent to, oh.
I think we can
people are
join
still
with
going.
everyone we
Yeah.
want. A couple of folks didn't get, let me send, I guess Daniel didn't get sent to,
I think people have to click to enter the breakout room.
okay,
So,
there we go.
yeah. And I think we, as co-hosts, we can transit across different breakout rooms.
Yeah, so for everybody who's still here, is there anybody who's not able to, wants to join a breakout room but can't? We may have some who are sort of here but not here.
Yeah.
I do that myself.
Yeah, I think it's great. People have joined, and there still are joining, some of them. But one thing that we can do is we can broadcast message to all rooms. So maybe when there's like 5 minutes to go, you can just send a message saying that to start wrapping up and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So let's see. So it's 4:37. We finish at 5, right? So maybe at 4:48, I'll give them like the 2-minute warning, because I hate to interrupt, because sometimes like when it goes like, oh, like 10, 9, 8, 7, I just like I can't even think anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's true, but at least it's a soft chat message that will come through. So,
yeah, so maybe 4:46 or something. Just say we've got a few minutes. I hope people are using the documents.
Yeah, I'm opening them now to see what's going on. But it did work out great. I mean, everybody's assigned a room, and I only imagine they're talking. So there are people in, so breakout 4 has already, and 5.
I wonder if I should set up a Davidson, or maybe the Davidsons will. I'll set up a Google Doc for the Davidson page.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. Some of these are being quickly filled in. So I guess I'm gonna pick in some of them, and I'll be back in a little bit.
So Regis, I kept trying to broadcast a message, but it kept flicking on and off.
Let me see if I can. So
I think I already sent it finally, but I think
you did.
maybe every time you join and not join, it resets the something anyway.
Oh, so sorry.
that's
I
fine.
was just going in, and I mean there's been great discussion across all the rooms that I went to, and I think I went through like 4 or 5 of them. So
oh, perfect. Yeah, thanks so much for checking in on them. One of the disadvantages of being of being one of the organizers is we don't get to be a participant, but
yeah.
But I guess we give them 2 more minutes. I gave them all the 4-minute warning, so that's that's good.
So I will join one just to see if I can see the broadcast message on chat, because I mean I wasn't checking, and people are likely not going to be checking, so they're just going to be booted off eventually, some of them.
Right. They'll get the message and then they'll be yanked out, which is always disconcerting.
Yeah, I'll be right back. Yeah, I didn't see a message on chat or anything, and I didn't get, but maybe I was between rooms, but maybe it's a pop-up or something that comes, but yeah, I guess we'll just see how I mean how surprised people are gonna be, because
Hi.
Hello, hi Beatriz, how are you?
Are you trying to send a message to the breakout rooms?
I sent one a little while ago. Yes.
I suppose it's just a pop out, and sometimes people just don't notice.
Okay, so I guess we should probably bring people back now because it's 4:50. I'll just close the rooms and people will get brought back in.
Okay.
Okay, well, there's 1 minute, so I think people are gonna get some notice now if they are there, because I think
I just closed all the breakout rooms, so they have no choice. They're gonna be yanked back.
I think they're invited out now, and in 40 seconds they will have to leave.
They'll be forced out. Yeah. So I just put into the help asking a student volunteer to archive the chat if possible. There's I know when I do a Zoom, I get to archive the chat. I don't know if they're
the meeting is being recorded, so wherever it's being recorded in the cloud, or there will be a file with the chat transcript, and I think it saves locally too, so you and I think will get that transcript.
Okay. Yeah, because there were so many good comments. I don't want to lose that. Okay, so I think we're all back. Sorry to drag you out of what I'm sure were some really wonderful conversations, but I wanted to make sure we had time at the end to do some group sharing. So if we could go through each of the groups, and if each group could take just 1 minute to share with the rest what were some of the main highlights from your group. So I don't know if the main note taker could do that. It's we've only got a minute, so be fast. Let's start with group 1.
Great. With breakout 1. All right, so question 1, challenge. We had 3 challenges to 1 opportunity. Challenge, additional effort on the part of the organizers. Challenge, getting introduced to existing members of the community. And then subpart, after you meet their avatars virtually, you might not recognize them in real life. Another challenge, people who might have been able to attend in person being told by their managers that they can't because there exists a virtual option. And the opportunity, of course, the obvious one, that funding is a lot easier to attend with lower funding. Question 2, what aspects of the conference are most important? Demos that don't work when seen remotely, novel technology, input output, especially not only haptics and headsets. Oh, are you
sorry.
That's ours.
Yeah, no, I was just showing
Because I'm just reading it. Yeah. All right. Networking, of course. So you can see question 3. What do we do to maintain increased access opportunities? So I think Steve typed these. Oh, yeah. One of them, Greg's idea. So have rows of phones or tablets that you take at random to dinner and bring a remote person to dinner with you, or a 360 camera. So what's this? Have virtual attendance at physical dinners made possible by, by doing 3D reconstruction. By everyone wearing cameras and sensors, creates a 3D world. And finally, what new research opportunities is the research on doing all this, right? To how to make virtual attendance a more effective thing to do.
Hey, thanks, Bill. That was 1 minute. So let's move on to group 2. If you could just sort of, I mean, we can all read the document, but if you can sort of verbally like draw us to what some of the main points were from your group.
So I think we were second one. I didn't realize, but seeing the text. So we talked a little bit about opportunities of participating in hybrid format. We heard some people will watch movies, but then, videos, but then we said we like to share those videos with students. And so you have much larger multiplier with many students watching the content. Improving user interface in selected multi-user VR platforms. And so depending what we choose for the kind of VR format, you would like to polish and improve user experience. Let me see. I think the aspects of VR conference that are most important, we all agree: networking, social events, social context, hard to simulate chance encounters with colleagues, hands-on experience, and especially with experimental devices, prototypes. There's no way to mimic that virtually. Consider platforms that enable deaf or hearing impairment users, and then talk about research opportunities. Somebody said, if we can't figure it out, who can? So I love the comments of previous groups. So let's have some research on that.
Okay, so I think we need to, in the interest of time, we'll have to move on to group 3. So if you could just give us, maybe the 45-second highlight from group 3.
Was this our group?
This was our group.
No, we were 5.
It's
sorry, okay.
Yeah, the group that had the document that's being shared now.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if our note takers here, but I'll just sum it up. So we basically talked about our visions for a hybrid format and what things to consider, like networking opportunities and accessibility, so that many people might not be able to access an in-person conference if they don't have the travel budget, for example. And we were talking about how we would envision a hybrid conference that supports both in-person people and remote people. And one thing that came to our mind was that you might just, if you are at a conference in person, you might just wear some VR headset or AR glasses and then see the remote participants as avatars walking past you. And this might enable us to have this accidentally interactions. And also we were talking about that it would be good if we had a track to research hybrid conference formats, because we are the community, we are the VR community. Who else should come up with a good technology for this hybrid format? So it would be nice to have a research track for that, or maybe even some grants or sponsors for demos on hybrid conference formats. I think that's mainly sums it up.
Thank you so much. We're running out of time. I'm so sorry, but let's move on to group 4. We'll just see what we can do. So that was
yeah. I can go ahead and chat to this. A lot of what folks have already said were things that came up as well here, including, if we can't do it, who can? There's a good point about considering the difference between truly hybrid experiences versus fully virtual experiences, and understanding kind of the trade-offs of each of those and the challenges that are uniquely suited to each of those. One opportunity was around setting up, like really leaning into the idea of the satellite experience and setting up telepresence rooms that are designed for hybrid experience. And then another point that came up that stood out was considering our like what we consider to be inclusive in our hybrid events, and whether or not we're actually meeting that inclusivity that we're aiming for.
Thank you. So let's see, room 5. That's Chandy, Ed.
Yes, I was a note taker, so I'll dive in, and if anyone else has another comment, add it. So we talked about several components. One of the nice things about being virtual is that we have these records of previous talks, especially videos have been a great gain that we've gotten for virtual conferences. But as Ed noted, it should be noted that there's no guarantee that these records on, for example, Discord and YouTube will be maintained for posterity, as these programs are not beholden into those goals. Also, we talked about some of these trade-offs with hybrids. Like Gudrun raised a good point with classrooms, where people are more willing to ask questions sometimes because that barrier isn't there, and you can ask questions without interrupting the flow. One other thing they had is that conferences are never going to be the same as they were previously, and that's okay. Feel free to add, guys.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much, Haley. We are going to wrap up because I don't want to take away from the keynote that's starting, but I think this was extremely valuable, both the perspective from our panelists, the contributions from them to the breakout groups, and everybody's sharing an opinion. So thank you so much. And yeah, let's enjoy the final hours of the conference.
Thanks so much for organizing this, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Regis.
Bye.
Thanks.
Still, I still have my cards and I still have my chips.
I have the chips too.
I do too.
Mine are unopened. I have an unopened pack and a pack that I use.
Seeing all those pictures of Bill just made me miss so much the, not getting together, and all the wonderful friends that I've made in the past, 20 years of coming to this conference. It's kind of irreplaceable.
I miss music with Ed.
I think it's a crime that I haven't tipped back a beer with all of you. Physically.
I need to jump in to remind you that we have a keynote starting, because Paul Debevec is already there. So just, but you can enjoy it over a beer, Ed. I think that was you.
That is a great idea. I'm going to show up on camera.
Thank you so much. It's going great.
We want
well
research.
Earned, everybody, it's well earned.
We want research in virtual beer technology. Best paper award, if you could do that.
A lot of smell papers this year, so.
Yep. So see you over in the keynote, and thanks, Victoria and Regis, for doing that. I was watching it in the lobby. Yes. I think it was really, really good.
Thank you, Tobias.
Thank you for giving us this opportunity.
This is and thank you, Ed, for the leadership in this. I think it's a turning point for what's going to happen next.
I'm going to try.
Yeah. No, but I think honestly, I think it was long overdue that we had that panel. So I'm really grateful that you made it work.
I didn't have enough time to find more photos, though. Sorry.
That was so cool.
It was amazing. I'm going to go back to the recording and just see that again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for inviting me. It was really very interesting.
Yeah, thank you so much. Your perspective was just so spot on. I'm really glad for the things
Yeah,
that you said.
it was really good, Katharina. So
Thank you. Thank you. I hope I see you all next year in person.
Yes, me too.
Sure.
I need that.
Okay, bye.
Thank you very much,
over.
guys.
Bye.
See you
Yeah, I
guys.
think we have to close it. Regis.
Yeah,
it
I'll do
will.
that.
It
All
will
right. Bye. See you around.
Bye.
Thank you. See you guys.